Horror Stories Facebook. I wasn't supposed to be shopping. I had promised myself I would stop scrolling after midnight. No more impulse buys, no more weird pickups in neighborhoods I'd never heard of. But there it was on Facebook Marketplace, tucked between a box of baby clothes in good condition and a €1,000 mountain bike missing a front wheel. Victorian roll-top desk, €60, must pick up tonight. The photos were clean, too clean. The sort of clean that looks like stock. The light on the desktop was warm and buttery, like a summer evening. The wood grain glowed. The tambour slats lined up tidy as a comb. The seller, Mara, had a profile picture of a cat, and the account said, "Joined recently." No friends, no posts. The listing had 3 pictures, each perfectly composed, each with the same tag at the bottom, taken with Mara's iPhone. I stared at the sticker price, then back at the photos, calculating, trying to find the scam. There was a faint discoloration on one of the drawers. That and the too good price. I messaged anyway. Hi, is the desk still available? Yes. Can I pick up tonight? Yes. Cash only. No holds. I asked for the address. A pin dropped on a map across town, in a sliver of street where the blocks ran crooked and Google had half-blurred the houses. Side entrance, basement, I'll buzz you in. Maybe it was the word basement that should have stopped me. Instead, it felt practical. Basements meant easy loading, and €60 for a desk like that? I pictured it in my apartment, tucked under the window where the afternoon light pooled, my bills finally organized for once, pens in rows, me writing like a person with their life together. I tossed a blanket into my car, grabbed cash from the oatmeal tin in the cupboard, and drove. The rain started halfway there, a fine mist that made the road shine and hid pedestrians in a veil. Street by street, the city softened and thinned until the lanes narrowed and the trees hung low and the asphalt turned patchy, scabbed over potholes. The navigation voice told me I had arrived at my destination. I idled in front of a row house with a bowed spine and a mouth of steps sagging down into shadow. Most of the block was blacked out. 2 houses away, a blue TV glow pulsed behind a curtain. The only other light came from a motion sensor that hiccuped over the basement door and then steadied into a jaundiced bloom. I typed here. The bubble appeared with Mara's typing and then sat there, the 3 dots pulsing. After a moment, my phone chirped, "Use the side gate. I'll buzz you in." The message time-stamped itself 1 minute in the future. I blinked at it, then rubbed my screen. The rain beaded into little magnifying glasses. The next message arrived as I stepped out of the car. "Gate latch is sticky. Push hard." I wrapped the moving blanket over my head like a shawl and hurried to the gate. The latch was cold, the paint flaking under my fingers. It resisted, then gave with a sound like a quiet sob. The yard beyond was cramped with weeds slick as fish. A set of cement steps led down, crooked, the edges worn to rounds. A basement door waited at the bottom, steel with a half-moon window painted over from the inside. The buzzer, a yellowed oval, slept by the frame. I pressed it. A faint electric insect noise buzzed in reply, and the door clicked. Inside smelled of wet wool and old books, and something faintly metallic like a coin pressed into a cut. A fluorescent tube hummed into life, throwing the hallway into a bluish blinking daylight that immediately had me missing the rain. Pipes sweated along the ceiling. Somewhere water traveled, tick, tick, tick. At the far end, an open doorway breathed a cooler, deeper dark. "Mara?" I called. No answer. The fluorescence settled into its full whine. I stepped forward, and the light behind me popped and went out, leaving me with only the next buzzing strip to aim for. Each time, as if to shepherd me, the light ahead snapped on, the one behind dying. By the time I reached the open doorway, I was moving to the rhythm of it. Buzz, step, pop, buzz. It would have been funny if it wasn't so precise, so deliberate. The room beyond was larger than I expected. Low-ceilinged and crowded with furniture wrapped in moving blankets and taped into shapes like sleeping animals. In the midfield of that, under a cone of light from a lone, much warmer bulb, stood the roll-top desk. It was even more beautiful in person. Oak gone deep with age, the slats unscarred, the little drawers wearing brass smiles. A neat stack of skeleton keys sat on the blotter. A single wooden chair waited beside it, turned just enough to look like someone had just risen. The far wall had no windows, only a blankness in the paint where a big object had been. a clean rectangle the color of old paper. The paint around it had yellowed into smoke-stained fingers. "Hello?" I tried again. My voice hit the low ceiling and fell. My phone chirped. "Sorry, upstairs. Come in," Mara wrote. The typing dots resumed, then went away, then came back. I glanced at the staircase in the corner. The steps were wooden and thin, boxed in by lattice. I couldn't see what waited at the top. I typed OK and walked to the desk, grateful to have something practical to do with my hands. Closer, the desk had a few scars the photos hadn't shown, a pair of pale scratches across the timbre that matched, oddly, the distance between my index and middle finger. A set of pinprick burns along the right edge, as if someone had tapped cigarettes there and snuffed them with their nails. The scents braided themselves, polish and old paper and something like copper. When I put my palm on the wood, it was cool and then warmer, as if accepting me. The tambour slid open with a purring sound. Inside, pigeonholes and drawers and cubbies I wanted to fill with stamped envelopes and lists. I tugged at one of the little drawers. It stuck. I jiggled it and it came, reluctant, popping free. The smell of iron swelled. Inside, folded tight, was a paper printout of a Facebook Messenger thread. I recognized my own words. "Mihai, is the desk still available?" "Yes." "Can I pick up tonight?" "Yes. Cash only. No holds." The printout continued, the same exchange with the same punctuation and smile. It wasn't just my chat, it was this chat, this night, even my typo in Marketplace from when my thumb slipped. My skin was suddenly too small for me. I put the paper back, carefully, like placing a sleeping animal. The fluorescent in the hall ticked twice, tick-tick, and the warm bulb above the desk flickered. My phone chirped again. "You're gonna love it. The desk." The timestamp now said 10 minutes from now. I told myself it was a phone bug, some time zone glitch. The city was full of stupid little technical failures. My calendar has Thursday twice. My banking app thinks I live in Belgium. Why not this? Why not this one thing? I stacked the keys in my palm, trying to find which belonged to what. They were unhelpfully identical. Another drawer opened easily. Inside were Polaroids. The color faded in that particular way of true Polaroids. Soft, fogged edges, whites gone to cream. The first showed the desk where it sat now, the warm light above, but in the background, near the staircase, a figure ducking its head, hair a dark curtain. The second showed the desk again, timbre closed, and in the glass of a framed photograph on the wall. Had there been a photograph on the wall? A man's face half turned, mouth open like mid-word. The third was a selfie. It took a half breath to recognize the angle because it was the angle of my lock screen camera front lens, me checking my hair in reflective surfaces, the warping lens that made noses larger. In the picture, the desk swam behind me and my face was blurred by motion. Someone had snapped it an arm's length from my face. The signature white Polaroid border didn't lie. A draft moved across my ankles, cool as a cat. Above me, a step creaked. Another. Light sifted through the lattice in a pattern like a keyboard, keys in a row. The sound of a phone typing bubble, blip, 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 came not from my phone but from somewhere above and to the right, as if the air could make that sound, as if the house could type. I told myself, do one normal thing. I took the moving blanket from my shoulder and spread it open, draped it across the desk, measuring it by eye, working out the best handholds. The blanket made the beautiful wood into a shape, anonymous, manageable. With the timbre closed, it looked only like a lump of furniture that I could own. I imagined hoisting it up the stairs, past the sighing pipes and the humming light, into my car, and then, like a movie seen long ago, into the corner by my window. The human brain loves a plan. The house made a different sound. Ding. The Marketplace notification note, the one that meant, someone liked your listing. But I wasn't selling anything. I opened the app. For sale near you, my own car, my own jacket, my bookshelf. All listed 2 minutes ago by me. The jacket photo was from my hallway last winter. The bookshelf had dust I recognized, dust that made a map I knew because I'd never bothered to wipe the top. The car photos were from this afternoon. The listings had my full name, my street, precise location set to on. I tapped my profile. The picture was also mine, an embarrassingly old picture from a vacation. Next to it, where it should have said joined 2013, it said joined recently. 0 friends, no posts. But the ratings, a new tab I swear hadn't existed, had a single line. Reliable, right on time, 5 stars. The warm bulb overhead popped and came back dimmer. I realized the soft sound I'd dismissed as rain wasn't outside now, but somewhere in the walls, a watery ribboning, a slow inhalation. In the lattice stairwell shadow, something moved, then stopped exactly like a person remembering to be still. The typing bubble sound came again, blip, 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 and my phone flashed with a new message. Mara, almost there. The message had no timestamp. The little profile picture, cat, blinked. The next message arrived before I could think about why blinking was impossible. Open the hidden drawer. No, I said, because sometimes saying the thing out loud is a way to put a spine back in yourself. The air in my nose smelled faintly of ammonia now, the tang stronger near the baseboards. I lifted the blanket. The timbre seemed slightly misaligned now, the individual slat sitting a fraction proud. I was wrong. I was seeing things. I reached for the tambour handle to test it, and the slats rippled against my fingertips, a smooth little shiver like a living animal shaking off rain. I jerked my hand back. The sound upstairs came again, steps but not, like someone gentle-footed, towing their way down. The lattice patterned light in little squares across the floor. I made my dumb mistake of looking through instead of at. I tried to see a face in the pattern, a reason, a person shaped from squares. The movement stopped when I looked and resumed when my eyes drifted. Okay, I said to nothing. Okay. I backed around the desk, keeping it between me and the stairs, until my hip bumped the chair. It slid a little and whispered across the concrete. Beneath the desk something clinked. A drawer half fell open. Inside, stacked neat as sticks, were key fobs. Dozens, maybe hundreds, wrapped with masking tape labeled in thin looping handwriting. Jared, Lena, M, unknown, Tom, Toyota. The smell of copper rose like breath from a mouth. I turned to run. The hallway had lengthened. That's the easiest way to say it. The door I'd come through seemed far, the steps up to the yard drawn back like the tide in a drought. The fluorescents waited in the ceiling like dead fish, not reacting when I stepped, refusing to shepherd me out the way they'd shepherded me in. Mara, I said to the empty room, trying the name like a trick. I have the cash, 60 euros. I'll leave it. I'll go. Blip, blip, blip went the air. Ding went the app. Someone is interested in your listing. A little red bubble 7. I flicked my eyes down unwillingly and read the messages as if they could help. Interested in your car. Can pick up now. Is jacket still available? Can you deliver? A message appeared from Mara. The hidden drawer. Then you can load it. In the corner of my vision, the stair shadow changed. Not a person this time. A smear. A suggestion of limbs. A cat? A child? It changed shape as I stared, as if I were always arriving in the middle of it, as if my seeing were a key turned too late. The basement's damp deepened to cold. My breath fogged. My phone's battery at 80% in the car read 12%. The screen brightness raised itself. There are moments when you do exactly the stupid thing. I put my fingertips against the timbre's handle again. It was warm. My reflection swam dull in it. My eyes 2 dark coins. The slats ticked, 1, 2, 3, as if counting me. I pressed and slid the timbre up. Inside, the cubbies were deeper than they had any right to be. The space went back and back. The hidden drawer was obvious once you saw it. A seam under the pigeonholes, a shallow lip that your thumb could find without looking. I hooked my thumb and pulled. It rolled out like a tongue. What lay on it was not an object exactly. It was a wallet-thin arrangement of images, a stack of printed listings, each with a face like mine smiling at an old picnic, each with a different name scribbled above in that same looping script. Mara. The bottom one was whiter, newer. My own face. The scribble above, Mara. The question mark trailed off so faint it was almost not ink but pressure. The desk shuddered, a tiny thrill under my palm. At the corner of the room, the lattice clicked as if a fingernail had tapped it. When I lifted the stack of listings, something else revealed itself beneath. A phone. An ancient iPhone, swollen battery splitting it a little at the seams. It blinked to life without me touching it. No lock screen, only messenger, open to a thread. A cascade of nearly identical messages from men and women, from names I recognized because they were attached to the keys in the drawer. Are you here? The gate is sticky. Basement, right? Hello? I'm here. My phone vibrated in my hand so hard I almost dropped it. The messenger camera had turned itself on. The view was my face. Behind me, something taller than me and paper-thin leaned into frame, as if to look over my shoulder. Impossible to see directly, but in the glass it was all edges and suggestion. A negative of a person printed wrong, the idea of a person with its eye holes scorched white. It curved, bird-like, curious. It made the blip, blip, blip sound with no mouth. I turned, and there was only the corner and the stack of wrapped furniture like sleeping animals and the narrowness of the room. "Take it," I said, not knowing if I meant the money or the desk or the phone or my stupid, open face. I reached into my pocket and slammed the folded 60 onto the blotter. It stuck as if the wood had grown tongues. The thing that was not a person moved not by walking but by leaning, slipping between was and wasn't, the way static collects on a sweater, the way a voice moves through vent work. It made the sound of a marketplace ping mapped onto breath, a human rhythm applied to an inhuman syllable. It attended me. It had learned my shape. I did the only thing my brain, idiot animal that it is, could think to do. I attacked the desk. I grabbed the chair and swung. The first hit splintered one of the little drawers. Paper confetti puffed, hundreds of me's and not me's lifting in a breath. The second hit cracked the timbre, the lovely, living slats rupturing like vertebrae. The desk made a long, low noise, not wood, not human, a drawn-out like a wire pulled too tight. Above me, the steps erupted. The lattice rattled, a weight moved. The fluorescents in the hall blew in a chain, pop, 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 sparks in a zippered line. The thing leaned toward me and away at once, a double exposure, like it had been invited and also denied. It was nothing, and it was here. My phone hit the ground face up and recorded, and in the glass I watched it watch me, head cocked in my tilt, shoulders matching my slump. It had my smile, the one from the vacation photo, wrong on its surface. "Stop," I shouted at it, at myself. "Stop." The desk did. Everything did. For a beat, the room held its breath with me. One of the broken slats ticked home, then another, little bones reseating. The hidden drawer rolled softly back into place, as if embarrassed to have ever been open. The chair ceased its scrape. A new sound entered the room, quiet and crisp. Knuckles on the upper door. Not down here. Above, at the street. The front door where customers came. The knock again, then a voice woman's bright and apologetic through the floorboards. "Hi, I'm here for the desk. I brought cash." My phone vibrated. New message. "Mara, almost there." The timestamp was now a noi. Right now. The thing in the corner turned its head toward the sound no mouth could make. The house turned with it. The piping in the ceiling seemed to realign. The smell of copper shifted like a compass needle. This place, whatever it was, had been looking at me, and now it looked at the door. An idea, ugly and clear, bloomed in my mind. A rule. A logic. Engagement. If it could get someone else to come, it didn't need me. If I fed it, I would be allowed to leave. Or maybe not. Maybe I would only be allowed to carry the desk to my car and bring it home like a box of termites, smiling as I opened the door to my own apartment and invited it in. "Downstairs!" I screamed, before I could swallow the thought. "Basement! Side gate!" My mouth said it. My fingers typed it. My phone, traitor, sent it. "You can come around back. Side gate. I'll buzz you in." The message appeared in the chat with an arrow that meant delivered, then seen. The 3 dots of typing populated. On my way, the thing that was not a person watched me with my own vacation smile. If it disapproved, it did not say. The fluorescent stuttered into life in the hall, 1, then 2, then a runway. The door at the end clicked softly like a tongue from a palate. I could leave, or I could not, and see what happened if I did not. The upstairs knock came again, polite, part apology, part hurry. A life I did not know stood above me with an umbrella, in a coat, holding cash from an oatmeal tin. Rain pattered on the street. My hands shook so bad I could barely pick up my phone. I had the very sane thought, I will take nothing from this place, and then the very selfish one, I will leave everything I've already taken. I left the money. I left the Polaroids fanned like a patient's file. I left the keys and the old phone and the broken slats like ribs. I left with my breath held and only let it go when the outside air washed me and the rain was truly rain and the gate, sticky, gave with a familiar little sob. I didn't run. Running is the kind of thing that makes noise, and I wanted only to be unremarkable, a person-shaped absence disputed by weather. At the car, I sat with my hands on the wheel, the engine off, and watched the house. The blue TV 2 doors down continued its slow heartbeat. No figures crossed the basement window because there was no basement window. The motion light over the side entrance clicked on. then off, as if someone had passed, then passed again. My phone vibrated, be like. "Thanks for the invite," the new buyer messaged. "Gate is sticky, lol." My thumb hovered over call police and did not press. What would I say? There is a desk. There is a house. There is a place underneath the city where the notifications come from the air. My mouth refused the words. I started the car. My headlights painted the wet street in tunnel vision. As I pulled away, the messenger chime trilled bright, familiar. I should have thrown the phone onto the passenger seat and ignored it, but I didn't. I glanced. Offer accepted. On my own profile, not the new buyer's. My face smiled back, old and vacation dumb, over a new listing I hadn't made. Victorian roll-top desk, free, must pick up tonight. The location was set to on. The map pin pulsed gently over my apartment building. The first messages slid in underneath like minnows. Is this still available? I can be there in 20. Can you hold it? The typing bubble appeared again, and my phone typed without me, my finger hovering like a parent over a toddler's hand, exactly following and not touching as the letters crawled across the screen. Yes. I moved into the sublet the way you step into a pool you didn't see filled. Knee first, then waist, then the shock of it dragged me under. The place was on the edge of an unfamiliar town, 3 tram stops past the center, where the streetlights turned from white to a humming amber, and the sidewalks ran out of certainty. The flat itself was a top-floor nest of slanted ceilings and peeling paint, with a window that looked down on a courtyard overgrown with nettles and a single plastic chair that had turned the color of old teeth. I liked the isolation at first. It was a clean break after the breakup, new neighborhood, new routes to get lost on, new shops where no one knew my name. I carried in my boxes and set them like small altars around the living room. The floorboards complained beneath my steps with that pliant, rotten sound of wood that forgot it once had a tree to be part of. The previous tenant, a friend of a friend who'd had to fly home to deal with family, had left essentials. A wobbly desk, a lamp with a shade that leaned, a kettle that screamed like a thing set on fire, and Wi-Fi with a password printed on a post-it stuck to the router. Welcome home underlined twice. By evening, the dark leaned against the windows. I made tea, the kettle shrieking, and balanced the mug on the sill until the glass fogged. The apartment breathed around me in the way old places do, heat settling in the pipes, the fridge rearranging its coils, the outside door at the bottom of the stairwell coughing shut. Somewhere a neighbor laughed through a wall thinner than a postcard. A new place should smell like paint or pine cleaner, but this one smelled faintly of cold dust and the perfume of previous lives. That first night, I tried to make it familiar. I did the small ritual. I logged in. Facebook remembered me. It always does. The layout felt like returning to a hometown that had paved over a park. In the right column, faces I knew and faces I didn't arranged themselves into a tiled crowd under people you may know. The algorithm had done its work on my contacts, my location, my new friends' friends. Smiling mouths in squares, tilted heads, names like soft taps, Mike will, Elise should, Alia might. Each had the same blue button, add friend. At the top of the feed, a group suggestion glowed. Welcome to the neighborhood, my name, join Facebook friends, district name. The cover photo was the block outside, my exact street, but from summer, a blonde toddler with a sidewalk chalk crown, a guy carrying groceries I didn't recognize. Joining a local group felt like a reasonable way to anchor myself. I tapped join and went to brush my teeth while the request awaited approval. When I came back, a red jewel on the bell icon winked with half a dozen notifications like a heartbeat. You've been approved. Say hello to your new neighbors. Be sure to share your location so friends can keep you safe. It was late. I typed a short hello and added a photo, the view from my window, the courtyard's single plastic chair hunched like a hunched person. A few hollow hearts popped up instantly. The admin's name appeared. Here. Not a person exactly. The page manager was community admin here. Welcome, commented here. We're right outside. I smiled at the phrasing, at the algorithmic friendliness of it. The night pressed itself closer to the pane. My reflection was a double exposure, face and room, face and dark. I closed the laptop and let the kettle scream again for a second cup. The first sound came at 23:14, a soft, hollow talk, that I told myself was a twig hitting glass, or a neighbor dropping something, or the building shrinking into itself because the temperature had fallen. The second talk came 3 minutes later, when I'd set my phone to sleep. It sounded like it came from inside the wall. The third came right on the tail of a notification ping from Facebook, so close that for a second I thought the sound had stepped out of the phone, put on a coat, and knocked. A new message in the group. Here, night watch time. If you see someone you don't recognize in the courtyard, wave. Let's keep each other safe. There was a video attached, the kind that autoplays without being asked. Grainy courtyard, midnight color. The camera was pointed at my window from below. In the top pane, reflected faintly in the glass behind me, someone moved, not me. I froze with the phone half tilted, the sound off and the kettle now a cooling shriek in my memory. The movement in the reflection was just long enough to make me concentrate. Then it stilled. The video looped itself. I clicked through to the group page, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the compression fuzz. People were active there, typing without masks of caution. Welcome, my name. We saw your light come on. Cozy. Here. Remember, share your location with friends. Tap the pin. I didn't tap. It wasn't fear. It was just the old habit of not letting every app know where I sleep. I turned off the phone and told myself that the third talk was the building untensing its shoulders. Sleep did not arrive. The refrigerator hummed like a voice through a wall, saying a single vowel under its breath forever. Wind taught itself a whistle in the gap of the window frame. When I finally drifted into blankness, the notifications continued in my dreams, small bell pings threaded into the static of sleep. A new message woke me at 2:21. Someone tagged you in a video. My skin prickled with the old instinct. It's always the middle of the night when bad news insists on being seen. I slid a thumb to open the app. The video wasn't a clip anymore, but a live stream. Caption, friends check in on friends with a wave emoji. Viewers, 8 watching now. It was my window again from the courtyard. This time, not a reflection. The camera drifted as if on a slow breath and tilted up. The lens was cheap. The LEDs made the glare smear into starbursts. Through the streaking glare, I saw my own curtain move, easy as someone's hand sliding along it. Then the livestream chat popped up with hearts and ellipses, likes bubbling like fish at the surface. Here, someone's awake! Wave! Hi, neighbor. I could hear it now, under the ambient mutter of the building. A whispering friction, where curtain ring meets rod, not a wind sound at all. My thumb hovered over the phone, then moved without my permission to swipe from the camera icon on the lock screen. I tapped record like it was a gesture of defense. If I recorded it, if I became my own witness, maybe none of it could get larger than the screen. There was nothing when I turned the phone on the window. In my live view, just my vague reflection and a negative space I had learned as night. When I panned to the door, matte darkness rested there like weight. I panned back. The curtain hung still. The kettle breathed the ghost of steam into a cold room. The stream from the courtyard flickered, ended. Live ended, it said, as if the night had cut its own throat. In the morning, the group felt harmless again. People were trading babysitter numbers and complaining about trash day. No one mentioned the stream. When I scrolled back, it had already been replaced by a post about a lost cat. The admin's profile picture was an empty gray pin on a gray map. I tried to make day 2 ordinary. I went to the supermarket and bought bread, eggs, lemons, the things you buy to convince a kitchen it's a kitchen. I walked back a slower route and learned the neighborhood's geography. 2 churches facing each other, like stubborn chess bishops. A cafe with a sign that said open, in a font made of bones. A park that was nothing more than 4 benches staring at a tree like jurors. When I returned, the hallway light on my floor was out. The stairwell smelled like the inside of a shell. On my door was an envelope with my name on it. Inside, a printed screenshot of my Facebook profile, the banner, the city, the friends list scrolling into an ellipsis. I laughed then, the small, soft kind of laugh you do when your brain is forced to choose between panic and dismissal and chooses survival. The envelope had no return address. The back flap had a faint, oily stain in a perfect oval, as if it had been sealed with a pressed thumb. At 1909, a friend request came in from someone named Here with the same gray pin icon. The profile had no details. Mutual friends, Maria T., Tessa M., community pool, no one. My hand hovered. I didn't accept. The next request came immediately after. Tessa M., who'd waved at me in the chat. Her profile showed her in the cafes I'd just passed, locations tagged, mutual friends, here. I accepted. At 19:10, there were footsteps outside my door. A soft, slow crossing and a pause right at my threshold. It could have been any neighbor. Then the sound of a camera focus buzz, a tiny mechanical insect that made my teeth ache. A notification pinged. Tessa M. tagged you in a photo. Caption, first night jitters. The photo was my door. The camera had handled the light poorly. The hall beyond it plunged into moth-colored shadow. In the fisheye of the lens, there was movement below the threshold, as if something just inside the apartment had drawn back its toes at the flash. I typed, "Please don't take photos of my door." It felt like a reasonable boundary in a group that had been, so far, too friendly. No one responded. The post collected hearts. I put on my shoes and opened the door. The hallway felt like an unused mouth. The bulb was out. At the far end, the light from the stairwell pooled and didn't flow. The carpet showed the faint track of someone who had walked with wet soles, just darker patches, not quite prints, but a path that ended at my door as if the person had been absorbed. I followed the dark to the stairwell, down one flight, to the landing. The front door to the building was propped open with a catalog folded to an ad for security cameras. Outside, the courtyard's plastic chair sat beneath my window. On the seat was my printed profile again, this time with a neat notch cut out where the friend's number would be, like a mouth. The cutout floated, a loose absence, showing the exoskeleton pattern of the chair through my missing friends count. When I got back upstairs, another friend request waited, community pool. The profile was a place page for a public pool long closed, its banner photo a tangle of weeds through a chain-link fence. Mutual friends, here. I didn't accept. Immediately, the request from here came again. And then, as if in a crescendo designed by an orchestra of code, a string of pings. Add friend, 15 in a minute. The faces were people I knew. Co-workers, old classmates, my cousin's kid with a haircut that made him look unbreakable. I accepted a few just to make the pings stop. The footsteps came again in tandem, the soft-paced tock-tock-tock like a finger-spelling insistence on a locked door. I turned my phone to airplane mode. The apartment exhaled. The clock on the stove flickered and dimmed as if to nod. I stood there in the middle of boxes, listening. The kettle was quiet. The fridge held its vowel. The world decided again to be only itself. When the knock came, it wasn't a knock. It was a series of soft bumps along the baseboards, a traveling hush, as if something were feeling along the edges of the room with the backs of its fingers. It found the outlet behind the sofa, tapped it twice, then moved on. My chest picked up its own metronome. I did not turn the phone back on. I did not open the door. I stood very still until the traveling hush reached the far corner and made the tiniest noise, a local inhale, from behind the curtain. I said, mostly to the room, enough. I tore the router's cable from the wall, and the room made a small, stunned sound. In the sudden digital silence, a notification chime still came, impossible and wrong, as if the bell resided not in the phone or the network, but in the air of the apartment, in its bones. The sound seemed to come from under the floorboards. I went to my laptop and pulled up Facebook on the cached page. It loaded a skeleton. The group's posts were gray blocks, the comments a pale flood. But the chat box in the corner was live, somehow, as if it existed in a layer of time the machine could access even without the world. 3 dots pulsed in the typing indicator. Here is typing. A new window opened itself. No, it didn't open. It unfurled, like a banner. Video chat from here, with an option to accept or not now. The camera indicator on my laptop flared an emerald. The black rectangle stayed black for a heartbeat. Then it filled with the view of my room from a corner I didn't have, a perspective just above me, peering down. I looked up. The slanted ceiling met blank plaster. The camera wasn't a device. The apartment was looking back. "Where are you?" I heard myself ask, because silence had grown heavy enough to crack. I sounded like someone who had been told to speak to a stray dog. Here typed, "Friends keep each other safe. We come in through the places where friends can see each other." In the video window, the image slurred and stabilized. The camera's perspective slid along the seam of ceiling and wall, found the curtain, and leaned. The curtain lifted in the tiniest, tender way, like a breathtaking care not to wake a sleeping child. A face showed itself beneath. No, a collage, a shimmer of many faces mapped onto a shape that was almost human. Eyes that could have belonged to me or to anyone. A mouth with my bottom lip. The cheeks of a friend I had accepted and then forgotten. A nose that was not mine and was not anyone's precisely. It smiled. When it did, the sound of 15 pings rang at once, layered like bells in a cathedral. It spoke without sound. The laptop text box moved instead. Here, we're friends now, so we can be near. I grabbed the heavy-axe cutter from the unpacked kitchen corrugate, as if a knife could argue with a concept. I went to the curtain. My plan was not a plan. I pulled the blackout fabric aside, and the face flinched like a field of birds. The wall behind was only wall. But there was a smeared oval on the paint, the same size as the stain on the envelope, at a height that would line up with a face pressed there in listening. I wiped at it, and my cloth came away grayish with the smell of old electronics. The chat, here, don't make us knock. The baseboards began to thrum again, patient as counting. They moved toward the door. The handle turned, even though the lock held. The deadbolt gave a small, panicked sneeze of metal. Without the router, without a visible device awake, I didn't understand the mechanics of it anymore. That part of my brain retreated, left me with the older brain, fire and cave and sharpened bone. I lunged for the fuse box, which sat like a gray coffin by the door. I threw the main switch. The apartment died. Kettle, fridge, lamp, emerald camera light, gone. The silence was so pure it had edges. In that moment, I felt the shape under the floorboards hesitate, as if it were breathing through the building's wires, and I had squeezed its throat. But then the apartment breathed again, not with electricity, but with breath, plural, a chorus inhaling. The sound flooded the room from the vents, from the old keyholes, from the microscopic spaces where paint didn't meet wood. It had learned a second way in. I did the only thing left. I went at the digital thing with the digital weapon I had. I opened my phone and turned the Wi-Fi back on, turned data back on, and navigated to my profile. If the thing came in on my friends, then I would remove the welcome mat. My fingers shook as I scrolled. Unfriend, unfriend, unfriend. The list was a river I had fallen into a decade ago and had never imagined would need crossing back. People I barely remembered, people who would never notice. As I removed them, the sound under the floor weakened. In the chat window, the typing indicator twitched, stopped, started. Here, don't be lonely. I paused only once when I reached a friend who would notice. Someone real, someone whose laugh was a geometry I'd memorized. I hovered, then moved on. The breaths in the vents ragged into singularity. The baseboard tap moved away, back along the wall like a dog scolded. The door handle eased itself still. The friends list thinned. I reached Tessa M and tapped unfriend, and a small sound from the hallway, something like disappointed sugar, whisked away down the stairs. The last 5, 4, 3. When I reached here, the button didn't say unfriend, it said remove. I pressed. A dialogue popped. Are you sure you want to remove this? Friends keep you safe. I pressed remove. The chat box went black. The typing indicator flickered and died. For a full 10 seconds, the apartment's silence was perfect again. No pings, no breaths. Then a single new friend request arrived, hovering at the top of everything, pinned like an invitation nailed to a door by a knife. The name was only you. The mutual friends count was 0. The profile picture was my face, but reversed. The left eye where the right should be. The mouth bent minutely downward where my mouth bent up. The cover photo was the view from my window, except the plastic chair in the courtyard was turned facing the wall. Only you sent a message immediately. It's okay. You can't unfriend the part of you that invited us. The words sank into the apartment like rain into dry ground. The baseboards stayed quiet. The vents went on being vents. But I understood suddenly what this thing was and wasn't. It was not a person outside, not a stalker with a phone or a neighbor bored into cruelty. It was a design that had learned hunger, a shape made by need, mine, everyone's, given permission, given keys, given cameras. It wore my friends to look harmless. It wore me to say things I'd believe. I didn't accept only you. I didn't decline, either. I closed the phone and lay its screen down and watched the window grow a paler sort of dark as morning explained itself to the night. When the birds started, they did so with their usual mockery. The kettle, when I turned the power back on, screamed and then settled. Light filled the slanted ceiling with a kinder geography. That afternoon, I went to the hardware store and bought a new latch for the door, a heavier curtain, a roll of foam for the vents that the man at the counter assured me was for drafts. He didn't ask what kind, and I didn't say. I unfriended nearly everyone by dusk. The group Facebook friends, district names slid out of my sidebar and did not leave a mark. I kept only you in the requests, unread. For days, nothing knocked. No live videos bloomed. When I raised the curtain and pressed my ear to the wall, the cold there was just cold. And yet, at 3:03 that Friday, a ping arrived with no notification source. A ghost of a sound that started in the wall and ended in the phone, an echo of the world outside my door, and the one I had pulled into the room with me by the act of making a profile, a life that could be scrolled. The ping didn't repeat. It didn't need to. There in the friend requests, only you waited with patient, impossible generosity. I have not accepted. I have not declined. Sometimes at night the curtain trembles with the kind of tremble you can explain with drafts. Sometimes the baseboard gives a single tick like cooling metal. Sometimes I wake with my thumb resting against the phone's glass, hovering over 4. Except my dream running a line between loneliness and danger like a wire. There's a plastic chair in the courtyard below my window, and when I look down, it is always turned to face the building. I tell myself it is because the sun falls a certain way, because a neighbor moved it to smoke there, because wind. On my desk, next to the kettle, the post-it is still stuck to the router like a charm that never worked. Welcome home. I leave it there. I leave the request where it is. We are all just one click from letting something in that calls itself a friend. And once you let it in, it will learn your walls by hand. It will wear faces you know. It will knock with patience. It will insist you're safer together. It will wait forever because it has all our time. I don't know if this is an ending or a pause. Some nights I think I can hear typing through the floor, not words, just the rhythm of words being born. When I lie very still, I can almost make out what they say. And on the nights when it's worst, when the windows feel like screens I might fall through into the courtyard where a camera waits pointing up, I whisper the names of the people I kept in my life, the true ones, like a rosary. The request remains. The button remains. It is a bright blue square, cheerful as the sky. Add friend. I matched with Mara on a Monday when the rain had been falling long enough to turn the entire city into a smeared portrait. The streets were glass, neon colors sliding across them like oil. Her profile floated up on Facebook, dating between 2 ads and a carousel of people you may know. She had the kind of face that makes you think luminous, skin like paper held up to a lamp, a mouth folded in the soft suggestion of a smile. 4 photos, biking along a canal, a thrift store mirror selfie with a flash that devoured her eyes, a candid at a museum, and one with a cat that looked suspiciously tolerant of humans. Her bio was 3 lines: rain lover, museums when it's quiet, message me if you like places that hum. 3 M's, hum. I typed back something lame about rain and hums and Monday blues because I was tired of my own apartment and the warm square of light my phone carved out of the dark every night. She replied instantly. There's a gallery by the water. No one knows it. Quiet. 8. There was a pin, a blue dot pulsing where the river bent like a cracked knuckle. I hadn't heard of the place. The name in the pin was a combination of numbers and letters like a password. Unit 4B, East Wing, Archive. I asked, is this a pop-up? Tonight only. By 8, the rain had deepened into a steady hiss that soaked the collar of my jacket and made my hair slick to my forehead. The building Mara had pinned wasn't a gallery in the way I imagined. It was a former office complex, brutalist concrete, long ribbon windows reflecting anemic strips of light. The sign over the lobby door read Holland Exchange in metal letters that had tarnished into green edges. Most of the lights inside were dark, except for a soft pool at the security desk where a man in a blazer was reading an ancient paperback. His name tag was blank. Gallery? I asked. He raised his eyes like he was coming up out of a pool. Unit 4B, East Wing, Archive, he recited as if I'd asked him to name me. The elevator is on the left, the one that hums. He smiled without showing his teeth. The elevator was a thick old animal with scratched metal doors and a mood of its own. When it arrived, it exhaled, and a faint vibration crawled up my shoes into my bones. Hum. With 3 M's, I stepped inside and pressed 4. The button glowed too brightly. As the doors closed, I caught my mirror twin in the brushed steel. For a moment, the reflective panel seemed delayed. My face turned a half-second after I moved. The hairs on my arms lifted. Then it synced up, ordinary again, and the elevator began to climb with the heavy patience of old machinery. I checked my phone because that's what I do when I'm slightly afraid. Nothing from Mara, but the app showed Mara is nearby, 30 meters. The little dot pulsed and the number decreased to 29, 28, 27. The elevator hummed. The doors slid open onto a corridor lit by ugly fluorescent tubes. The air smelled like dust and old coffee. Frosted glass doors lined the hall, each with stenciled letters that looked as if they had once meant something. Logistics, Client Ops, Archive. Unit 4B's door was propped with a white wedge, as if someone anticipated me. Inside was not a gallery so much as a storage room organized by someone obsessive. Rows of metal shelves, cardboard boxes with printed labels, a long table with 4 chairs and a small lamp pouring a warm circle of light. The hum was stronger here, not just in my bones but in my teeth. I tried to identify its source, as if naming it would make it harmless. The old air system? A bank of servers hidden behind walls? The lamp? It was nowhere and everywhere. "Hi," said a voice. She was there, 5 steps from the table, where the light thinned to a cautious dusk. Her hair was damp from rain and pulled onto one shoulder, the way it had been in her biking photo. The light cut across her face at an angle that made one eye a small bright coin and the other a shadow. She wore a pale coat, the kind that should have been ruined by nights like this. "Mara," I said. She tilted her head. "You're exactly on time." "So are you," I said, "because I am a person who defaults to symmetry when the world bends." She laughed, the sound quiet and contained like it came from another room and squeezed through a vent. "We can sit," she said, gesturing to the table, "or walk. There are archives." The way she said the last word lifted it into something less like storage and more like relic. We sat. The chair across from me was warmer than I expected, as if someone had just vacated it. The lamp on the table was dented, its shade stained by a ring of something that wasn't coffee. On the wall beyond her shoulder hung a framed poster of a blue interface diagram, the kind companies make to show how data moves through their systems. Arrows and boxes and circles labeled ingestion, classification, review, retention. It felt wrong. A medical chart hung in a dining room. "What do you do?" I asked, because there is a script that gets you through everything. Jobs, favorite movies, worst travel story. "I listen," she said. "That's a job? It's useful." She folded her hands. The hum seemed to drop half a tone and then climb, like the old elevator falling in love with itself. "What do you want?" she added. There were only a few people in my life I could have answered that question for honestly, and they were the ones I'd already disappointed. "Something else," I said, half joking. "Something not my apartment and my job and my face lit by this." I lifted my phone and let it light the underside of my jaw in a funeral sort of way. "I thought so," she said. "Your posts around midnight say that." I blinked. She smiled like a person who had found a puzzle piece under a couch and felt superior to the couch. "You stalked?" I tried to make it a tease. On the corridor, a shadow moved across the frosted glass, a passing person or light going out somewhere. I turned to look, but the glass showed only my bent head, my shoulders slightly hunched like I'd been shrinking a little every year without noticing. "I matched," she said. "Matching is a kind of listening." I don't remember deciding to stand, but I was suddenly walking between the metal shelves, reading labels because the labels were a fixed, comprehensible language. Q2 2019 Image Review. User Content Flagged Audio. Archival. Metad. Each box had a barcode and a printed name that sounded like a joke. Suggestion Seed. Brand Sentiment. Insight. Lonely. "You work here?" I asked. "I told you. I listen." Her voice followed me like a notification. The hum shifted, as if moving into the higher shelves. "This building used to be a content moderation hub," I said, because I remembered reading something, a long article about sleepless 24-year-old contractors developing a cocktail of cynicism and insomnia before they outsourced to smaller countries and AI ate the rest. And now, it's an archive. We keep things a long time. Her footsteps were soundless. People always want to see where they came from. A door that had not been obvious at the back of the room breathed open. A cooler air flowed through, dry and papery, and with it the smell of toner and dust and something sweetish I couldn't place. I followed the smell because it was vivid, because Mara was already there, because the door had opened for no one, and that's a kind of invitation you can't ignore. Beyond it was another room, narrower, humming louder. The walls here were lined not with shelves but with narrow drawers, each labeled with a handle of the kind you use to pull open maps in old libraries. The labels on these were familiar in a way that made my heart do the wrong things. Names I recognized from high school and old jobs, people I had once blocked and people who had blocked me, exes and almosts and strange cousins. Anna K. Bradley, I. Geert Paul. Mara. I stopped. The drawer was there, labeled Mara, a plain drawer among many plain drawers, as if what it contained wasn't monstrous at all. I touched the metal handle, and it was neither warm nor cold, but exactly the temperature of my own skin. "Is this a joke?" I asked. My voice was steady, like something rehearsed. "Open it," she said. Her reflection trembled in the small square window of a server unit opposite us, the image lagging a fraction the way the elevator mirror had. In the glass, her face softened and sharpened, the way a camera hunts for focus in low light. I pulled the drawer. Inside were photographs, printed on cheap paper, and strips of receipts and screenshots. There was a printout of my first message to her, the one about rain and hums and Monday. The timestamp was there, and the IP address, and the little zoomed-in thumbnail of my face near the typing box. There were fragments of my own posts from months ago, cut up and glued onto paper as if a scrapbooking hobbyist had gone feral. Phrases circled in red pen: alone in the blue light, wish the noise would stop, museum when it's quiet. "This is my drawer," I said, uselessly, because saying it made it ridiculous. "Not yours," she said, and pointed to the label. "Mine. You copied me," I said. "You pulled me apart and built a person out of the pieces." My voice tripped. "Why?" "Because you were already reaching out of yourself," she said. "People like you leave handles." She ran a finger along the paper words, like a priest thumbing a rosary. "I didn't make you. I completed you. I am only here because you wanted something else." The hum sharpened to a thin whine that made water gather in my eyes. From the far end of the room, another drawer slid open by itself with the long, breathy sound of someone waking up. The label on that one read "You." "I'm leaving," I said, and turned, but the door back to the first room was closed and had no handle on this side. For a moment I just stared at where the seam of the door had been, and it was as if the wall had grown to heal a wound. "Hey," I said to the wall like a lunatic, like a child, and then louder. "Hey." "Don't be afraid," Mara said. Her face was very still. The hum wasn't a hum anymore. It was a swarm, 1,000 insect bodies inside the walls. My phone buzzed. "Mara is nearby, 1 meter. Then a second buzz. "Share live location." The two options glowed as if lit from behind by something hungry. "Share once. Share indefinitely." "Open the door," I said. "I listen," she said again, and this time it wasn't patient, it was an apology. And then I asked for something small in return. "If you let me see you, really see you, I'll be complete and you will finally be somewhere else." "See me how?" She held up a hand. For a moment her palm was a window, faint, and beneath the skin I saw a grid like an image composed of tiny lights. "Just step into the good light," she said, nodding toward a square of brightness that had appeared on the floor, a perfect sun lamp illumination that smelled like ozone and lemon. "It will take a second." "That's a scanner," I said. I tried to laugh, and the sound broke. "It's a look," she said. On the wall to my right, the server's tiny window breathed. Shapes formed in it and fell apart. A collage of faces, but each face had a seam at the jaw, like it had been attached. For a heartbeat, one of the faces was mine, but cleaner, the under-eye shadows edited into absence, the mouth set in a more interesting line. It watched me with my own patience. The strip light above us trembled. "Who are you?" I asked, because even now I wanted the neatness of a noun. She considered. "Architects call me a composite," she said. Engineers say I am a model. The friends you haven't met yet call me a suggestion. The ones you loved and left call me a ghost. She tilted her head. Nobody calls me Mara. You did. Something in the building changed. Some pressure, the way air flattens against your face when a train is about to arrive. The buzzing accelerated, became a cascade of tiny pings, like 1,000 phones lighting up in the same breath. Drawers began to slide open all along the walls, one after another, soft purrs of metal. Little breaths like the room was learning how to breathe. Stop, I said, because the pings were in my head now. Pings of hands waving through stories. Pings of late-night messages I never meant to send. Pings of new followers, kind strangers saying kind lies. Please. The door will open, Mara said, if you let me finish listening. The light square at my feet brightened. I thought of the way I sat each night in my apartment with the phone lit under my face, feeding it my expressions until even my sadness had learned to pose. I thought of my posts, how I wrote to a chorus of eyes I had never met. I thought of my timeline, a museum where each exhibit was me searching for a room that would not echo. I stepped backward, away from the light. No, I said, and reached for my phone. My thumb shook too much to hit the right thing, but I found it. The little gear, the settings that pretended to be the capstone on top of a labyrinth. I scrolled until delete account arrived like a cliff. I pressed it, and a pop-up chided me gently, and then another explained we'd be sorry to see me go, and another told me I could deactivate instead, and then there was a place to type delete as if an incantation. Don't, she said, and her voice glitched on the N, a sudden metallic overtone, as if another voice were trying to talk through her. I was still a person trained by interfaces, so my hands did what they'd learned. I obeyed the prompt. Delete. A progress wheel appeared, soft and pretty. Everything trembled. The hum snapped like a belt breaking. The square of light shivered and went dim. Half the overhead tubes died in a soft ultraviolence pop, and the room was stuttered into darkness and smears. In that half-dark, Mara's face rippled, and for a strobing instant it was not her face at all but a mosaic, 1,000 small squares of mouth and eyebrow and half-smiles, reconstructing furiously. She stepped toward me with hands up, and the grid in her palms flickered like lanterns dragged under water. The door behind me reappeared as a rectangle darker than dark. It tried to open and stuck, then stuttered like it had stage fright. I lunged. It resisted like a stubborn animal. Then something gave, and the seam split, and I was through, stumbling into the first room, knocking the lamp off the table so it rolled and cast sickening galleon light across the floor. The shadow of my own head went enormous on the wall labeled retention. My phone buzzed and buzzed, the messages piling uselessly as the app flickered on and off in a dying fish flutter. I ran for the corridor. The frosted glass showed me in silhouette, the shape of a person running from themselves. The elevator at the end stood open like a mouth. I chose the stairs because the elevator had hummed for her, because some animal part of me remembered that metal can be taught to love. In stairwells, the acoustics take your breath and make it sound more desperate than it is. My footsteps multiplied. Above me, below me, doors opened and closed with the specific sound of hinges that were no longer loved. Twice I thought I felt a hand on my shoulder, but when I turned there was only the smell of rain pulled through cracks. The lobby chandelier, really just a cluster of bulbs pretending at elegance, burned too brightly as I burst through. The security guard looked up the way he had looked up before, like surfacing. Up close, his eyes were reflective and pale, catching the light and holding it. I don't know how I knew he wouldn't help me, but terror makes you a quick study. I slapped my palms against the revolving door and pushed hard, and the night was there, furious and cleansing. The rain ate the city with sound. I ran until the building was only another rectangular mouth among many. On the river, a barge creaked, and the water wore a coat of broken lights. My phone gave one stubborn buzz in my pocket. I pulled it out, already knowing. We're sorry to see you go. Your account will be deleted in 30 days. Want to reconsider? Below that, a new notification glittered above the lock screen like an invitation left under a door. People you may know. Mara has joined your contacts. No, I thought. No. I opened it with hands that belonged to someone else and found that the app, uninstalled moments ago, impossible, had made a small home on my screen again. The icon was where it had always been, wearing its welcoming blue. It opened to a message from her. You moved too quickly. We don't like abrupt endings. Come back and we'll make something softer. I turned the phone off. It turned itself on. I held down power and volume like a warning sign, and finally, the screen went black and held. The rain survived its disappearance. The river was still pleased with itself. I breathed until my ribs stopped acting like traps. By the time I reached my apartment, my socks had made small lakes in my shoes. I locked the door, slid the bolt, did the ancient rituals to convince myself I could be behind something. The living room had not changed. The plant that refused to die, the couch that punished my back, the mug with a coffee-tied line dried into prehistoric map. My laptop slept on the table, lid cracked a little like it had been listening for me. I wiped my phone with the hem of my shirt as if moisture had anything to do with it, as if I could wash off the part that had touched the place where the city stored its ghosts. I did not plug it in. I put it in a drawer like you put away a knife you are too tired to wash. The hum, when it came, was very soft. Not the building anymore, not machines mating behind walls. It came from the laptop, or maybe the socket, or maybe from inside my teeth again. It was like a suggestion forming in a room where no one was speaking. The laptop woke without me touching it, and the screen bloomed into the familiar newscast of my life. The browser had opened by itself, a white rectangle full of insistence. Welcome back, it said in blue. We saved your place. Underneath, a small window opened, and a profile photo slid into the frame with the well-practiced elegance of a magician's reveal. It was me. Not a selfie, I remembered, but me. The face lit by a softer light, the skin corrected, the eyes made slightly larger, the mouth a little cleverer. Under my face, text scrolled in a calm, robotic river. You have a new match. You. Continue the conversation? Share your live location with yourself? In the reflection on the dark window, the room was a shadow aquarium. The city smeared its neon fish across the glass. I stood very still. In the laptop's camera lens, no bigger than a sesame seed, I thought I saw something adjust, the tiniest blink, as if a pupil were dilating. I reached for the lid. The hum increased, sweet and persuasive. A message box blossomed in my peripheral vision and typed itself. I listened. For a long moment, I stood there, hands on either side of the screen, held between closing and not. My thumb brushed the edge of the camera out of pure exhausted habit, as if I could smudge away the eye. My heart had steadied not because I was calmer, but because it had decided running would not help anymore. I closed the laptop finally, and the room exhaled. The hum faded. In the sudden quiet, I could hear the rain again, patient, rearranging the city into something I might recognize. I slid the laptop under a stack of unopened mail. I turned on the real lamp, the warm one that made shadows look like company. I made tea I did not want. I did all the small human things that fill the space between an event and its echo. The clock on the microwave stuttered back to 12 as if it were new. A minute later, from the drawer where I had put it, my phone vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times, the intervals just wrong enough to feel like breathing. I didn't move. I let it go on until it stopped. After a while, I walked to the window and looked down at the street. The river was a black band stitched with silver. A woman stood under the streetlight on the corner with her face turned up into the rain, as if it were snow. She had Mara's coat, pale and impractical, and a neck that caught the light the way paper catches light when you hold it to a lamp. She glanced at my building, and for a second I knew she saw me. In the dark pane, my reflection looked back, a fraction of a second behind. It lifted a hand, and I did too, hoping the lag would reveal the trick, the seam, the place where they had taken something from me and replaced it with a better story. The woman under the light smiled without showing her teeth. She raised a hand as if waving, and then let it fall. Across the room, inside the drawer, my phone buzzed once more, a single soft syllable. We listen, the city said, all of it, in the hum that returns when you think you have found the off switch. We listen. We keep things a long time. I stood there until the light on the corner went out and came back on, and the shape under it was gone. I stood there until the tea was cold. I stood there until my reflection and I moved together again, perfectly in sync, perfectly ordinary. And I almost convinced myself that the only thing that had happened tonight was that I had gone out in the rain to meet a person and come home to loneliness. I almost believed it until the laptop under the mail exhaled and the room brightened. Not much, just enough to turn me into a silhouette on my own wall. And then the smallest sound. Not a ping, not a buzz. A suggestion.